The mundane clatter of Sunday morning diner conversation, the comforting aroma of coffee and sizzling bacon, all vanished. Instead, a child's innocent whisper sliced through the air, sharp and clear, aimed directly at Michael's heart. "Daddy, that waitress looks like Mommy." Michael, engrossed in the ritual of dicing a waffle into tiny bite-sized pieces for his 5-year-old Olivia, not looking up. "Olivia, don't point at people, it's rude." The words, however, caught in his throat, dying unspoken, as his gaze finally lifted. In that instant, the world, as he knew it, simply ceased to exist. The fork, still clutched in his hand, slipped and clinked against the plate, a small sound that reverberated like a deafening gong through the sudden, suffocating silence of his universe. There, not even 10 feet away, a woman, identical, her smile, a luminous, familiar curve, the effortless grace with which she tucked a cascade of curly hair behind her ear, and her eyes, the very eyes that had closed forever 2 agonizing years ago. Sarah's eyes. It was impossible. Michael had stood over Sarah's cold, lifeless body in the morgue. He had felt the crushing weight of grief as he wept over her closed coffin. He had scattered her ashes into the serene, familiar waters of the lake, where their love story had begun. All those years ago in college, his wife was dead. Undeniably, irrevocably. Yet this woman was her. Bewildered. "Daddy, are you crying?" Olivia's small voice, laced with bewildered concern, pierced through the disorienting fog of his shock. He hadn't even registered the hot, silent tears tracing paths down his face. The waitress, oblivious, approached their table, notepad in hand. No flicker of recognition in her eyes. "Can I get you anything else?" she asked, her voice a melody so intimately familiar, it stole the very air from Michael's lungs. "Sarah?" The name escaped him, a raw, desperate gasp, a plea torn from the deepest chambers of his soul. The waitress's brow furrowed, confusion clouding her features. "My name is Jamie, I'm sorry, have we met before?" Michael found himself paralyzed, incapable of forming words. How could he possibly explain the impossible, the insane truth? How could he tell this woman she was the spitting image of his dead wife without sounding like a man unhinged? "You look just like her," Olivia declared, her child's honesty cutting through the strained silence. "Just like my mom in the pictures." Jamie glanced at the little girl, then back at Michael, a palpable discomfort settling into her expression. "I must have one of those common faces," she offered politely, clearly seeking an exit from the awkward encounter. "I'll get some more juice for the little one." She retreated swiftly, casting worried glances over her shoulder as she walked away. Michael felt the familiar world spin violently around him. For 2 long, desolate years, ever since that horrifying 3:17 a.m. phone call had ripped his life apart, he had accepted Sarah's fate. Dr. Lawson, the gentle, reassuring doctor, had explained the devastating car accident, the catastrophic injuries, the necessary closed casket. But now, as Olivia's innocent, piercing question hit him like a physical blow, innocently, "Daddy, why is Mommy pretending she doesn't know us?" A terrifying, undeniable doubt took root. He knew he should correct his daughter, explain about coincidental resemblances, about different people looking alike. But the words wouldn't come because deep down, an unsettling certainty was growing. Something was profoundly, terribly wrong. A chilling image flickered in Michael's mind. Dr. Lawson, his face grim, allowing only a fleeting, obscured glimpse of Sarah's face in the morgue's dim light. Then, the unsettling speed with which the cremation papers had been pushed through, almost hurried. And the hospital employee, suddenly blocking his path when he tried to visit the crash site. These once hazy memories now sharpened into sinister clues, the pieces of a terrifying new puzzle. He looked at Jamie again, her form now gracefully moving between tables, serving other patrons. With every fluid movement, every familiar gesture, the unsettling feeling that he was watching Sarah intensified, hardening into a horrifying certainty. The details of the alleged accident had always been frustratingly vague. A car hitting a tree during a furious storm, no witnesses, a road Sarah rarely used, and the most unsettling detail of all, the body had been transported directly to Central Hospital, where, by a strange twist of fate, Dr. Lawson, The very same doctor who had treated Sarah for a rare, perplexing illness just months prior was coincidentally on duty. "Come on, Olivia," Michael said, his voice strained, as he hastily left a $20 bill on the table. "We have to go." "But Daddy, Mommy." "It's not Mom, sweetheart," he insisted, though his own voice betrayed a tremor of burgeoning doubt. "Let's go home now." Michael took Olivia's small hand and practically pulled her from the restaurant, but not before his eyes darted to the establishment's name and address, committing them to memory. As they walked to the car, his mind reeled, a whirlwind of impossible questions. What if there was even the slightest possibility? What if, for some unimaginable, inconceivable reason, Sarah was alive? He buckled Olivia into her car seat, his movements automatic, as his thoughts spun with increasingly wild theories. It was insane to think Sarah could be alive, insane to question what he had witnessed with his own eyes at the morgue. But what if? He started the car, his hands still shaking on the wheel. On the radio, a song Sarah adored, a melancholic but beautiful melody, began to play. It felt like a sign, a confirmation. The universe itself, that some things simply defied coincidence. As he drove home, a single, unshakable certainty solidified in Michael's mind. He would not rest until he unearthed the truth. For the first time in 2 agonizing years, he felt something he thought had been lost forever: hope. That night, sleep was an elusive phantom, a cruel tease. Sitting in his dark home office, Michael meticulously examined dozens of Sarah's photographs for the 1,000th time. He compared every subtle detail: the delicate curve of her nose, the distinct arch of her eyebrow, the way her lips curved just so when she smiled, to the indelible image of the waitress Jamie etched into his memory. On the wall, he began to construct a mental map, a sprawling web of connections. Newspaper clippings about the accident, sterile medical reports, the life insurance documents that had paid out a considerable sum after Sarah's death. Everything that had once seemed normal, acceptable in the fog of grief, now screamed inconsistencies. "You're crazy, Mike. Completely nuts. Are you seriously telling me that Sarah, my sister, is alive and waiting tables in a cafe after we literally cremated her? Look at this, David. Look closely and tell me it's not her. My God, the resemblance is... It's uncanny. It's not a resemblance, David. It's her." The next day, after dropping Olivia at school, Michael headed straight to the local police station. Detective Parker, a bureaucratic man with a perpetually bored expression and a weary sigh ingrained in his posture, listened to Michael's incredible story with growing impatience. "Let's recap, Mr. Davis," the detective began, his tone dripping with condescension. "Your wife died 2 years ago in a car accident. The body was identified, cremated, and now you believe she's alive because you saw a woman who looks like her serving waffles?" The detective closed his folder with a dismissive thud. "Grief is complicated, sir. I've seen people swear they've seen loved ones and strangers. It's a common coping mechanism." "She has the same birthmark," desperate Michael pleaded, his voice rising, a desperate edge to it. "The same way of talking, the same—" "Mr. Davis," Parker cut him off, his hand raised. "If your wife was declared dead and cremated, there are certificates, autopsies, official legal documentation confirming her demise. I simply cannot open an investigation based on, well, this." The detective's gesture encompassed Michael, his frantic explanation, and the impossible photo on his phone. Michael left the police station feeling utterly defeated, a bitter taste of helplessness in his mouth. But the detective's dismissal, far from extinguishing his conviction, only fueled it. If the authorities wouldn't help, he would find the truth himself. His resolve, tempered by grief and now sharpened by this new, bewildering hope, remained unbroken. He began to discreetly frequent the restaurant, becoming a shadow in its bustling environment. He always chose a table tucked away, out of Jamie's direct line of sight, allowing him to observe her unnoticed. She worked 5 days a week, a model of predictable routine, always arriving by bus, always leaving at the same time. She lived a seemingly mundane life, utterly oblivious, it seemed, to the seismic shift she had caused in his. There was no recognition in her eyes, no hint of the woman he had loved, just the efficient, polite demeanor of a waitress. During one of his clandestine visits, Michael noticed something that sent a fresh jolt of unease through him. A man, tall in a meticulously tailored suit, observing Jamie from outside the restaurant. He was too still, too focused. The man took meticulous notes as she left her shift, then dissolved into the anonymous flow of city traffic, vanishing into a sleek black sedan. Michael, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs, quickly and discreetly snapped a photo of the license plate with his cell phone. With the crucial license plate in hand, Michael knew there was only one person he could trust, the only one who would help without asking inconvenient, skeptical questions. He called Marcus, a former private investigator, who owed Michael a significant favor from years ago. A complex forensic accounting case where Michael's expertise had saved Marcus's reputation and cleared his name. 3 days later, Marcus delivered. He handed Michael a slim folder, its contents a chilling revelation. Gravely, "Dr. James Lawson," Marcus stated, tapping the cover with a pointed finger. Somberly, "The car's registered to the Lawson Clinic, and guess what, Mike? It's the same doctor who signed your wife's death certificate." Lawson. The name reverberated in Michael's mind, heavy with unsettling implications. The man who had insisted on Sarah's swift cremation. The man who had treated Sarah for a rare autoimmune condition just months before the accident, an illness known, ironically, to sometimes cause episodes of confusion and memory lapses. Grimly, "There's more," Marcus continued, his voice grim, flipping open the folder. "Serious. The Lawson Clinic isn't just your typical medical practice. They have a neurocognitive research wing funded by a private foundation." Frustrated, "I couldn't access the patient files. Those are locked down tight. But they're studying something related to traumatic memory reconfiguration." A cold chill snaked its way down Michael's spine, settling deep in his bones. "You think?" He started, dread coiling in his gut. "I don't think anything, Mike," Marcus replied, his voice carefully neutral, though his eyes held a knowing glint. "I'm just saying it's too strange to be a coincidence. Too many threads converging." Meanwhile, back at home, a disturbing discovery awaited Michael, buried amidst old boxes of Sarah's personal effects. Sifting through a pile of her medical records, he unearthed a consent form. It was Sarah's signature, authorizing Dr. Lawson to include her in a clinical study if her condition worsened. But the signature itself, it looked strange, hesitant, almost forced. Sarah had never, not once, mentioned participating in any study. Why the secrecy? One evening, as Michael sat lost in his thoughts, Olivia, clutching something small and rectangular, bounced over to him. "Dad, I found this in Mom's old photo album," she announced, holding up a business card. It was from the Lawson Clinic, and on the back, a phone number was scrawled in pen. Michael's breath hitched. It wasn't Sarah's handwriting. Driven by a surge of desperate urgency, Michael decided to confront Dr. Lawson directly. He made an appointment using a false name, hoping to catch the doctor off guard, but at the clinic reception, his hopes were dashed. The polite receptionist informed him that the doctor had abruptly canceled all his appointments and traveled unexpectedly. Michael's gaze swept the pristine waiting room, seeking any anomaly. That's when he noticed it, through the half-open door of Lawson's private office, a framed photo on the wall. Lawson, resplendent in formal attire, accepting an award, and standing proudly beside him, a man Michael recognized instantly, the owner of the very restaurant where Jamie worked. Back in his car, before he could even process this new, damning connection, his phone buzzed. It was Marcus, his voice urgent, bordering on alarm. "Mike, I found out more about Jamie. She appeared out of nowhere 2 years ago. No traceable history, no family, no past records. Her employment was arranged by the New Mind Foundation, a subsidiary of the company that directly funds Lawson's clinic. And there's something even stranger. I found a prescription from a local pharmacy in her name. She's taking a cocktail of experimental drugs." That night, Michael made a grim, solitary decision. He couldn't trust the authorities. Sarah's death papers, with their convenient perfection, now seemed like a meticulously constructed facade. The direct, undeniable connection between Lawson, the restaurant, and Jamie was no longer circumstantial. It was unequivocal. The doctor wasn't just Sarah's former physician. He was actively monitoring her, administering some kind of experimental treatment. Michael's path was clear. He would continue his pursuit, alone if necessary, until every piece of this sinister puzzle clicked into place. Trouble. The unsettling revelations collided in Michael's mind, igniting forgotten fragments of the past. He cast his mind back, months before the car accident, to the genesis of Sarah's illness. A rare autoimmune condition, it had begun subtly, insidious in its progression. Fleeting moments of confusion, brief, disconcerting lapses in memory, periods of profound, debilitating fatigue. Sadly, Sarah, always so vibrant and sharp, was slowly being dulled by an invisible enemy. Dr. Lawson had entered their lives as a beacon of hope. A charismatic, seemingly compassionate neurologist, he had been highly recommended by a mutual acquaintance, hailed as a pioneer in neurological research. Confidently, Lawson spoke with captivating conviction about cutting-edge treatments, experimental therapies that offered a promise beyond the limited scope of traditional medicine. Thoughtful. Michael remembered the doctor's smooth assurances, his gentle, empathetic demeanor, his confident promises of a breakthrough that could restore Sarah to her former self. Hopeful, Sarah, ever the optimist, had clung to that hope like a lifeline. Thoughtful, Michael recalled a particular conversation, vague now, shrouded in the haze of anxiety and trusting desperation. Clinically, Lawson had spoken of a pioneering study that could reconfigure neural pathways to alleviate the most debilitating symptoms of Sarah's condition. Warily, he remembered Sarah, desperate for relief, her face etched with weariness, being remarkably receptive to the idea. Michael, consumed by worry for her health, had been too overwhelmed to scrutinize the details, too trusting of Lawson's seemingly altruistic expertise. He dimly remembered Sarah signing some papers, a stack of them, but he hadn't fully read them, hadn't questioned the fine print. Resigned? Who questions a doctor when their loved one is suffering? When they offer the tantalizing glimmer of a cure? Gravely, then came the accident. Frantically, the frantic, static-laced phone call in the dead of night, the detached voice of the police dispatcher, somberly, the immediate crushing pronouncement of death. Solemnly, Dr. Lawson's solemn, reassuring face in the stark hospital corridor, explaining the severe and irreparable injuries, the tragic necessity of a closed casket due to the nature of the trauma. Shaken, Michael, plunged into an abyss of shock and incomprehensible grief, had accepted every word as gospel. The hurried cremation, the scattering of ashes into the lake that held so many cherished memories. He had clung to the finality, the rituals of mourning, as the only way to cope with the unbearable gaping void Sarah had left. Numbly, he remembered the overwhelming sense of disorientation, the suffocating haze of sorrow that clouded his judgment, making him compliant, numb, utterly incapable of critical thought. Ominously. But now these fragmented, once accepted memories of tragedy morphed, gravely, into something far more sinister, thoughtful. Dr. Lawson's insistent advice, the unusual swiftness of the paperwork, the unexplained outright blocked access to the accident site and Sarah's full body, they all clicked into place with horrifying precision, forming a disturbing mosaic of deliberate, calculated deception. The supposed car accident, so convenient in its lack of witnesses, its bizarre location on a rarely used road, its direct immediate link to Lawson's hospital. It wasn't an accident. It was a meticulously orchestrated disappearance. And Sarah, his vibrant, loving wife, had been nothing more than a pawn in a far grander, infinitely more chilling scheme. Michael stared at the evidence he had collected. The photo of Lawson with the restaurant owner, the suspicious consent form, Jamie's strange medications. The motives for faking Sarah's death remained shrouded in shadow. Gravely, but one thing was terrifyingly clear. This wasn't just about a doctor. This was about an intricate, powerful network, pulling strings behind a veil of medical innovation. And Michael was just beginning to grasp the true depth of the conspiracy. Careful not to be seen, Michael began his determined surveillance of Jamie after work. She maintained her predictable routine, taking the bus as usual, but every Thursday she'd alight at a different stop, near an unassuming clinic bearing the ominous New Mind Foundation logo. Michael watched as she walked through the glass doors, greeted by a nurse who led her inside, as if it were a routine, familiar visit. Peering through the large front window, Michael observed Jamie in the waiting room. Her face relaxed, confident, unafraid. She was clearly irregular. The unsettling confirmation he needed was there. His wife had not died in that accident. Something far more sinister had transpired. As Jamie disappeared inside the clinic, Michael's hand went to his cell phone. Deep within his photo gallery was a password-protected folder containing the meticulously collected evidence. Photos of Lawson's car at the restaurant, the suspicious consent form with Sarah's hesitant signature, medical prescriptions found in Jamie's discarded trash, and the chilling connection to the New Mind Foundation. What had begun as an insane suspicion had now blossomed into a full-blown investigation. A growing feeling of dread settled over Michael. It wasn't just Sarah who was in danger. Perhaps it was a much larger, more pervasive scheme. The pieces of the puzzle were almost all in place, but the motive still eluded him. Why would someone kidnap a sick woman, fake her death, and then keep her working as a waitress in plain sight? One thing, however, was terrifyingly certain. While Dr. Lawson believed he was meticulously monitoring a docile, forgotten patient, he had no idea he was being watched by a man utterly determined to reclaim what had been stolen from him. Michael Davis had learned one crucial thing about himself over the past few weeks. When it came to Sarah and Olivia, there was no limit to what he was willing to do. Across the street, the lights in the clinic began to extinguish, one by one. The following night marked the culmination of Michael's meticulous surveillance. He adjusted his binoculars, his gaze locked on the entrance to the New Mind Foundation. David sat tensely in the passenger seat beside him, while Marcus quietly prepared his specialized equipment in the back. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" David asked nervously, his voice a low tremor. "If you're wrong, Mike." "It's Sarah," Michael affirmed, his voice resolute, his gaze fixed on the clinic's dark facade. "And tonight, we're bringing her back." The plan was audacious, born of desperation and an unyielding will. Michael had discovered that every Thursday, Jamie, Sarah, received a special session from Dr. Lawson. As expected, a sleek black sedan pulled up at 7:45 p.m. Lawson emerged, glancing around nervously before slipping inside the clinic. They waited precisely 10 minutes, enough time for Lawson to begin the procedure. The access card, obtained from a terrified nurse whom Marcus had shown the damning evidence, worked perfectly. "There are other patients," the nurse had whispered, her voice trembling. "Not just your wife. He's done this before." At the end of a dimly lit hallway, a faint blue light bled from beneath a closed door. Michael signaled Marcus. Firmly, "Start recording." Inside, Lawson's voice, devoid of its usual calm, boomed with self-importance. Boasting. "We're making remarkable progress with Subject 7. Memory completely reconfigured. Previous identity suppressed. Conditioning is so stable, she willingly accepts the medication without question." Inquiringly, "What about side effects?" asked a second voice, one Michael recognized with a sickening lurch. Conrad, the restaurant owner. "Minimal compared to what we've achieved," Lawson boasted, his tone chillingly clinical. "A procedure that can erase trauma, reconfigure identities. The military applications alone are worth billions." Michael felt a wave of nausea. Sarah, his vibrant, loving Sarah, reduced to Subject 7. Insistently, "What about her husband?" Conrad pressed. "Still looking into him?" Lawson chuckled, a dry, dismissive sound. "Chuck," dismissively. "Leave him. Who would believe him? A traumatized man seeing his dead wife's face in strangers. Classic." Michael kicked the door open with a resounding crash. The scene inside froze, a macabre tableau. Sarah reclined in a medical chair, her eyes disturbingly glazed, while Lawson, caught mid-motion, still held a syringe poised. Conrad stood beside a monitor displaying chilling brain scans, clearly labeled with Sarah's real name. "Gus, my God," David murmured, seeing his sister alive for the future. First time in 2 years, a raw gasp escaping his lips. Lawson dropped the syringe with a clatter, his face contorting from shock to raw, furious rage. "Security," he bellowed, lunging for a hidden alarm button. "I wouldn't do that," Michael said calmly, his voice a steely whisper. Marcus, ever efficient, raised his laptop, displaying a live feed of everything transpiring, streaming directly to the district attorney, high-powered lawyers, and state police. We're live, Dr. Lawson. Every single word you utter is being broadcast. Lawson's face drained of color, turning ashen. You don't understand. This is groundbreaking medical research, he stammered. Stealing lives, Michael corrected, his voice laced with icy rage. Faking deaths. How much is the life insurance worth? 1 million? 2? Multiplied by how many subjects, Conrad? Conrad, pale with terror, lunged for the door, but David, moving swiftly, blocked his path. Sarah, Michael called softly, kneeling beside her, his voice choked with a lifetime of longing. Sarah, it's me, your Michael. Her eyes remained unfocused, vacant of recognition. Lawson incredibly seemed to regain a sliver of his arrogant composure, a faint, chilling smile playing on his lips. She doesn't exist anymore. Jamie is who she is now, Mr. Davis. You can take this body, but the woman you knew is dead. Not as dead as your career, Marcus retorted, his screen now showing Lawson's horrified face juxtaposed with live reactions from the officers watching the feed. Or his freedom. We have over 30 documented cases. People declared dead, working in low-profile jobs, taking your experimental medication. Sirens wailed, rapidly approaching, their piercing sound growing louder with every passing second. You don't know what you're doing, Lawson shrieked desperately, his composure finally shattering. This is bigger than all of us. The right people approve this. We're saving innocent lives. Yes, Michael interrupted, his gaze fixed solely on Sarah. We can. As the police stormed the clinic, Michael's focus remained singularly on Sarah. He pulled a worn photograph from his pocket, the last one of them with Olivia, taken on the morning Sarah supposedly died. He placed it gently, reverently in her hands. Olivia misses you, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Our daughter. For a long, agonizing second, nothing happened. Then, something shifted in Sarah's eyes. A minuscule flicker, a distant light attempting to pierce through profound darkness. Her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around the photograph. Oh, Olivia, she whispered, her voice fragile, as if relearning how to form words. A sound Michael hadn't heard in years. Michael took out the worn, beloved teddy bear Olivia had insisted he bring, Fred. He placed it carefully in Sarah's hands. He missed her too, he said, his voice catching. Sarah looked at the teddy bear, a profound recognition awakening in her gaze. A single, warm, real tear rolled down her cheek as her fingers, by some intrinsic memory rooted deeper than the drugs, recognized the familiar fabric, smoothed by years of a child's love. As the paramedics gently placed her on the stretcher, Sarah grabbed Michael's hand with surprising strength. I'm lost, she whispered, her voice barely audible, laced with a heartbreaking vulnerability. Help me find my way home. Always, he promised, squeezing her hand, a silent vow that echoed through the chaos. Lawson and Conrad were handcuffed, their empire of stolen lives crumbling around them. The live broadcast ensured there would be no cover-up, no matter how powerful those involved. Outside the clinic, journalists were already gathering, a throng of flashing lights and eager microphones. As Sarah was wheeled to the waiting ambulance, a reporter narrated, one of the most shocking cases of medical fraud and kidnapping in recent history. Sources indicate that dozens of people declared dead may in fact be alive. Michael climbed into the ambulance, his hands still clasped firmly in Sarah's. The road ahead would be long, uncertain, fraught with challenges. But for the first time in 2 agonizing years, he felt it, hope. A future, however scarred, with the woman he loved. Through the ambulance window, he saw the world Lawson had built, a world of deception and stolen identities, crumble under the weight of the exposed truth. A truth that left a disturbing question lingering in the night air. How many other Jamies were out there, living borrowed lives, their families still mourning their fake deaths? 6 months had passed since that unforgettable night, in a quiet, sun-dappled house nestled in the tranquil suburbs, far removed from the haunting echoes of their old life. Michael watched through the window as Sarah played with Olivia in the garden. The harmonious sound of his daughter's joyful laughter, intertwined with Sarah's soft, melodic voice, creating a cherished melody he never thought he would hear again. The recovery was an arduous journey, fraught with both profound breakthroughs and heartbreaking setbacks. The first few days after the rescue were a chaotic blur of medical assessments and fragile moments. Sarah alternated between fleeting periods of absolute clarity and agonizing stretches of total confusion when she would revert back to being Jamie, her eyes distant and unrecognizing. The compassionate doctors at the Neurological Recovery Center had explained the difficult truth. The damage wrought by the experimental drugs and the insidious psychological